Alright, so I'm not too much of an artist these days. I don't really feel like I have that kind of inclination to making things as I used to. Um, I also don't really think I have that eye for beauty like some people do, though I have been trying to get better at it. And lately, actually, I've realized that it's a skill that can be learned. Seeing beauty, and just anything that comes to you. I've been trying to learn how to draw again because I feel like it's something I never really spent much time in my life doing. To me, drawing can be a really meditative thing for me to do. I get to put on some music, zone out a little, just put whatever's in my mind onto that paper. I still really am not much of an artist though, or at least some things are more difficult for me to do. The other day I was messing around with some play-doh and I wanted to have this like really sequential kind of methodology to learning how to sculpt it. And so I thought to myself that, well, all 3D objects are just compositions of more simple forms like a cube or a sphere. And so with this thought in mind, I decided that I was going to try to roll a sphere shape with my hands. And, in a way, it was kind of meditative. The palms of my hands pressing into the clay, smoothing it into shape, really focusing on how it all felt and how my solitary intention was in this task and nothing more. Just taking all of my attention and placing it on one thing just for a moment. And so I did make a sphere, a little ball, and it fit snugly into my palm. And I thought I did a nice job, but the warmth of my hands made the dough slowly melt down, and I couldn't keep the form for very long. And this bothered me, as I wanted to continue to enjoy what I had made. And so, moving on from this, I thought that the next, natural progression would be to make something like a cube or a box, and so I did. Again, pressing into the clay, smoothing it into shape, and this time making the corners as flat and as sharp as possible. It wasn't as good as a sphere, but it still looked like a cube. Again, it fit into my palm, but it still couldn't hold its form against the warmth of my hands. So I then thought the next thing to make would be a square pyramid, and so I chose to do just that. Again, pressing into the clay, smoothing it into shape, taking the square base and lifting up the clay from the center of it and then pushing it back down into a sharp angle. I thought that with all this intention and awareness that I was putting into this task of making the Play-Doh fit to whatever I could think of, was in turn making me a better sculptor. For some reason, I couldn't get the square pyramid to take shape. Either it was too tall, the square base wasn't square, or I just couldn't get it flat enough. So I took the clay and I pressed it all back into the shape of a sphere, and then I began again. And then still, I couldn't form the clay to what I wanted. Either the pyramid was too tall, or the square base wasn't square, or it wasn't flat enough. I must have gone through this back and forth between putting so much effort in and then seemingly throwing it all away just to try again because things didn't quite fit my vision that I had in my head. And I will admit that I was starting to get a little frustrated with things. And so I thought to myself that maybe I could just make things even. I'd make the base an inch long as it was wide, and I'd do the same for the height of the pyramid. And I did this, and yet I still could not make the pyramid look right. I couldn't make it perfect. I couldn't make it what I wanted, and so I was disappointed. What began as something I thought was meditative had began to become what was beginning to be a break in my piece. I grabbed all of the clay in my hand and I smushed it out of form. I had given up a final time, and I went on to do something else. It wasn't until later, like now, that I realized I was approaching many different things wrong. First, there was nothing wrong with the fact that I couldn't make that pyramid. If it was so easy, I wouldn't have known the impressiveness in itself. And maybe tangentially, in a way, if life was too easy, we wouldn't be able to know its impressiveness in and of itself. Next, I think I was envisioning things in a subtractive kind of way. I was taking the misshapen clay and pushing into it, trying to make it fit into the shape of a pyramid. But I could have instead started small, a small square base, then gradually pinched some clay off from the ball I had made and added it to the pyramid. Almost like the ancient Egyptians, brick by brick. I would build up from the base of the pyramid until I would meet the vision in my head. And so I think I was wrong in my approach to learning how to mold and sculpt. As it turned out, adding to was just as important as taking from. One couldn't have existed without the other. They belonged to one another. Now, I was beginning to think less and less of the clay in front of me and more about my own life. How could I carve out the life I wanted for myself? How can I slowly add more and more to it until it reaches my vision? And like how I wanted to learn how to shape and sculpt clay, I thought I would need to make my life better by starting not just small, but also intentional, patient, trusting, kind to myself, but also to others, kind to the earth that I press the soles of my feet into, and kind to the hands of my friends that I press my palms into when I see them after so long apart. Maybe life is more about focusing on what we all can add to it, how we can make a change within our day to day and shape things closer to our vision. But again, things won't be perfect. It won't matter how much thought you put into making the base, how much time and effort you put into saying just the right thing and to just the right person. So while we can have a level of control of the things in our life, at the same time, we need to be just as willing to let things be as they are. We need to acknowledge that we can add, but also subtract. And now I was really thinking to myself, man, I love Play-Doh. What I once thought was just something for kids has turned itself into a wonderful way to see the world. We all can be sculptors, visionaries, artists. We all can be a little bit better to one another. We just have to be intentional, and we have to be willing to start towards the things we want in our lives, even if it means we might fail once or twice along the way. Maybe if I, too, focus real hard, I can be an artist, a poet, a musician, a creative. Maybe if I focus real hard, I can be a warmer person, gentler,
Maybe I can change, take new shape.
just like the clay before me, Play-Doh, and everything else. All right. So, anyways, I wrote a poem. It's called My Shape. I think I can be like clay too. I can warm up in the palms of others. I can bend myself to their hands. I think I can be like a sculptor. I can add to fit the form. I can pinch out what's not needed. I think I can be like a poet. I can put words where I think they belong. I can leave space when I think it's needed. I think I can be like a musician. I think I can be like an artist. I think I can be like myself. And I think I can be like clay too.
Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum.